All right, Jesse on Fire, Thursday, June 25th. Let's talk about it, all right? We got a few things to go over, all right? So I'm going to do a separate video on Conor McGregor's comments to Khabib, what prompted them, Ali's, talking back to Conor, because, that's its own video. But for this one, we're going to talk about Masvidal talking about Khabib. We're going to talk about Usman and Burns and what they're going to make on this fight. And we're going to talk about Mickey Gall and Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker and Mike Perry. And certainly not in those orders because, I just jumped all around of who's fighting who. But Mickey Gall's fighting Mike Perry and his girlfriend. And Dustin Poirier is fighting Dan Hooker. I am very excited for that fight. That fight is going to be off the hook, all right? But let's start with Masvidal because Masvidal had some interesting things to say about Khabib, all right? So here's the deal. Masvidal has historically been incredibly hard on wrestlers, right? And he does that for a simple reason. He says that, these wrestlers are using wrestling to avoid fighting, which in many cases has been historically accurate, all right? Lots of guys. Remember lay and pray? Okay, there's not a lot of guys who are kind of lay and pray anymore. Like it's one of those things where the UFC almost, it's like, evolution, it kind of weeded those guys out because people who are not exciting fighters, even if they had decent records, they just kind of got, it's like, why don't you go fight in Bellator? You're not a needle mover. No one wants to see you fight. All right. So you can take that lay and pray and beat the street. Now, I think according to Masvidal, he would have said says both Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington fall into the, kind of the lay and pray approach. I would push back on that, actually, at this stage of their career. And I love me some Masvidal, obviously. Masvidal, one of my 5 emotional fighters, guys that I'm emotionally attached to their career, right? Don't get fucking weird, all right? I mean, emotionally, I really want them to win, and I feel upset when they lose, okay? I'm sorry. Jesus, everybody always trying to inject all kinds of weird shit, okay? Guys can have emotions, too. Fuck you. Anyway, but yeah, so I always have Masvidal's back. I mean, 99 out of 100 times. And this is one of those cases where I agree with him that Khabib is definitely not a lay and pray guy. And I hate lay and pray guys. And Khabib is a savage who's trying to smash your fucking head. And he's using wrestling to smash faces, which is awesome. I mean, obviously, and super exciting to watch. He also said that he would drop down to 155 and fight Khabib if the opportunity arose. I can't imagine any scenario where that would happen because how would that happen? I mean, line up a set of events where he would go down and fight Khabib unless he became the champion, period. Actually, that's the only way. He becomes a champion and one of them goes to the other one to try to, become a double belt holder. But right now, there's no scenario where Masvidal gets a shot at Khabib. There's too many takers at 155, right? But yeah, so that's that. I mean, I love Masvidal. I love Khabib. I would love to see them fight at some point. I can't see how that's going to happen. All right, so now we got Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker. So Bisping is picking Poirier, saying if the Poirier that fought Justin Gaethje shows up, that Dan Hooker's going to get fucked up. Now, I totally agree with that. Here's the thing. Both Hooker and Dustin Poirier are savages, dude. That fight is going to be so good. I actually haven't even looked at the line on that fight, but I imagine that Poirier is going to be a pretty heavy favorite. And candidly, I'm not convinced that would be completely merited. Dan Hooker is very, very good, dude. Very good. I'm literally looking up his record right now. So the last time he lost to Edson Barboza, but then he ran through he knocked out James Vick in the first, big deal. Beat Ali Quinta in what was a one-sided decision. I remember that. Paul Felder, that was a really close fight. But Paul Felder is a boss. He knocked out Gilbert Burns. I think that was Gilbert Burns' last fight at 155. So he lost to Jason Knight? Jason Knight, who then went over to bare knuckle boxing and had those incredible bare knuckle fights with Artem Lobov. Interesting. That is weird. But so he beat Ross Pearson, Mark Diaz, Jim Miller by first round knockout, Gilbert Burns by first round knockout. That's crazy, man. Lost to Edson Barboza by KO in the third, and then knocked out James Vick in the first. Decision over Ali Quinta and then decision over Paul Felder. Yeah, I mean, he looked great in that Paul Felder fight, and Paul Felder he's a beast, man. He's a fucking good fighter. So, yeah, I mean, Dustin Poirier is, in my opinion, probably just a guy who's on another level. You know, I mean, he's like one of those guys where like he's not going to beat Khabib. Dustin Poirier is not going to beat Khabib, all right? And I think if he fought Justin Gaethje again, I think Justin Gaethje with his new approach would probably win. And I definitely have Conor over Poirier. I think Conor would knock him out in the first. Ferguson, I mean, I actually am. It's only because Dustin Poirier had so long in between fights that I think he's not fighting Tony Ferguson, because that's a perfect matchup. Absolutely perfect, right? You have Tony Ferguson who loses to Gaethje, and you have Dustin Poirier who loses to Khabib, and those two guys are fucking warriors. I would be ecstatic to watch that fight. But yeah, I mean, maybe if Poirier wins, he fights Ferguson. I mean, honestly, that seems like the logical step, is whoever wins this fight fights Tony Ferguson, right? But also, let me show you this, because this is another reason why I'm rooting for Dustin Poirier. How are you going to root against a guy who does this video?
I'm a better boxer. I can scramble better in the wrestling scenarios. Better jiu-jitsu, longer, faster, more youthful. Can dance better, better looking. I mean, man, my hair is salon quality.
I mean, honestly, like, you guys know me. He said he has salon level hair, right? Anybody who claims that as a reason why you should bet on them, aces with me, right? All right, and then lastly, I think that Mickey Gall and Mike Perry is actually a more interesting fight than people are giving it credit for. I mean, everybody thinks Mike Perry's going to win because Mike Perry has tremendously better stand-up than Mickey Gall, which is accurate. He does. I mean, he has way better stand-up than Mickey Gall, at least unless like some Mickey Gall is like, you know, I don't know. He would have to have improved tremendously on his feet to have anything from Mike Perry, in my opinion, on the feet. However, Mickey Gall is a tremendously better ground fighter, but he's also one of those ground fighters that has never demonstrated an ability to take the fight to the ground very well, right? It's really rare where you have guys who are vicious wrestlers who also have incredible jiu-jitsu. Mickey Gall has incredible jiu-jitsu. Thus far, mediocre boxing and stand-up, mediocre takedowns, right? If he could really get great at one of those other things, he would be a beast, man, because his jiu-jitsu is solid. And then the last thing was just about Usman and Burns, and that was just that, you know, Ali Abdelaziz said that Usman's making 7 figures for this fight and Burns is making high 6s. So let's say whatever high 6s means. Let's be modest and say that's 600K. It's pretty good, dude. Pretty good. Not bad for where he was in 2019, right? His career has shot through the roof. Now, if he wins, and he wins by, you know, spectacular fashion, I mean, that's in doing more detail versus what I did yesterday, which was just kind of gloat that I was right, about them splitting up the camp. I mean, listen, Burns is at home. He has all of his coaches. His camp is going to be the same as every other camp that he's ever done. Usman has gone up and has implemented, you know, a new striking coach, or taken on a new striking coach, which is Trevor Whitman, who is, in my opinion, the greatest striking coach in the history of mixed martial arts. So, are certainly at the very, very top. It's very interesting to see how that's going to play out, because Usman knows, these guys know each other so well, right? And so think about this, okay? Think about this. Who has the advantage in that scenario, right? Who has the advantage in that scenario, being that the two of them have trained so much together? Now that you know Usman is going to Trevor Whitman and Gilbert Burns is staying at home, who has the advantage in the octagon? Because think about it like this. Gilbert Burns knows everything about how Kamaru Usman previously, I mean, everything about his game, right? Just like Usman knows everything about Gilbert Burns. However, now Usman is going up and he's got a new striking system, who obviously, you know, with an incredible game planner, an incredible coach, etc. And simultaneously, Gilbert Burns, the people who are building his game plan, they know this guy so well, right? They know him so well. It's honestly like paper, rock, scissors. They look at how Trevor Whitman has coached in the past, and they're like, okay, how is he going to game plan against Gilbert? They have to watch Gilbert and then anticipate what Trevor Whitman is going to tell Usman to do, and then they're going to game plan against that, and they know his tendencies, etc. It's a fascinating matchup. And it's going to happen on the feet. It's just that simple. That is going to be a stand-up fight the same way that Colby and Usman was when, you know, the ground games kind of nullify each other. Now, I will say this. If Usman starts winning on the feet, Burns is going to try to take it to the ground, because Burns, if it goes to the ground, has a tremendous advantage. Tremendous advantage if it's on the ground. Like he will against anyone, right? Like he will against anyone. So, yeah, I mean, that fight is fascinating. I cannot wait. Cannot wait. Fight Island, son. And I think that's where it's happening, right? I don't know. What do I know? Anyway, that's what I got. I'm going to do another video right now about Conor and Ali Abdelaziz and Khabib and all that shit. So, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, like the video. Peace.